Hello, everyone. Do we have an awesome treat for you today? This is a really hot topic and something that I've been fighting for and challenging for over a decade. And I think it's great that I have two guests with me, awesome guests, who have embraced open source and want to learn more and want to get your questions, your ideas, and your feedback what to do. So we have Survey and Victor from Utorr. And I want to let them introduce themselves, to talk about a bit about themselves, a bit about the company, and then we're going to talk about the journey to how we got to where we are now, and then we're going to also talk about what next. So who would like to go first? Sergey, you're the boss.
Okay. Utorr is calls Ukraine test on request. So we close everything what related quality. So we connect our key engineers to development teams, and they help them with the quality assurance processes and to craft high quality products at the end. So that's our main skill, main strengths, and that's what we do. And actually, you have decade of open source experience, and I have zero. So that's why we are here, and that's why it's really interesting to know more how to move to open source and what we can get there. So we just did few first steps, and Victor really more in this topic than me now.
So Victor, let's hear about you and what you've done, and then we'll go into the history and how we got to here.
My name is Victor. I'm working on automation testing. And as an automation engineer, I face different libraries, tools, instruments, and so on, and open source. I had some experience with open source project, but as a contributor, basically. And had a conversation about things that should be moved to the open source. And the thing is, I was thinking about the fact that we should also share some of our knowledge, our experience with the community. But to tell you, there were 2 points about that and why we decided to move that, and why am I trying to move some of our to share some of our experience with the open source community. First, open source projects allow us to demonstrate what we can, because very often our clients came and asked, what can you do? Can you use this or that tool? And we can just send them a link to our GitHub and say, okay, here you go. You can see our demos. There we these testing frameworks, these reporting tools, this CI, and I think that it's better to see once than to tell a lot. So it's part of our, maybe it can help us with marketing. And on the other hand, it's a open but still internal database, because I face a situation where when I need some testing documentation and realize that in our company we have a lot of experienced engineers, and they solve the problem, but I don't have access to this solution. I have to go and ping some engineer, ask him to provide me that document to that one or that one. I want to make it simpler. I want to have a single knowledge base for our entire company. And also, I'm pretty sure that it can help other engineers who are not related to Utorr, but it can be useful. They can find examples, they can find inspiration. We can share this with Unity and with other engineers.
There are so many benefits. I'm just going to recap in terms of the benefits you mentioned and also other benefits that I think people don't realize. So all the benefits you mentioned are absolutely correct. But also I feel that, and I really believe that by a company open sourcing certain example projects, documentation, etc. And I've got GitHub, and we're going to look through your projects you have shortly. So don't worry, everyone watching. We are going to look at some open source goodness. But the other benefits are, like you said, there is the branding, right? Your clients kind of can look at what you're doing without requesting certain documentations. And also people who might want to work with you in the future. There are people who might want to contract or be an employee, etc. They can look at what you're doing. They can contribute to the work that you're doing there as well. Get themselves noticed in your area. But also the people who are currently working with you now, they can feel more proud of their work. I've seen some places that I've worked at, and I won't mention any names, and they might have a few open source projects and a few that aren't that open source. And I guarantee you that the ones that are open source are actually a much better quality because they know their peers are going to look at it, their friends, potential future employers, potential clients in the future, etc. So they make an extra effort. And so I know they go that extra mile, make sure that it is up to something more that they're proud of. And I think that's really interesting. So when we met or spoke probably a couple of years ago, just to clarify for everyone watching, you didn't have any open source projects, is that correct?
No, not really. We didn't have the Utorr organization on GitHub. Basically, this started my projects that I created for my CV because I said the companies that I'd like to work with, I can also show them my results and share them and show them what I can do. But then I understood that it can be something bigger. We can highlight not only my skills, but we can highlight what the Utorr can, because we have a lot of engineers and they all can show their talents and abilities.
And you've gone to having quite a few repos. Like I said, we are going to go through these, and I had a quick look, and I've got some suggestions for you as well. But you've got quite a few, which is really good. And you mentioned something that made me think of something, and now I've forgotten. So I'll have to come back to it. My old memory. Everyone watching, don't forget, give the video a thumbs up. If you have any questions, also put them in the chat. If you have questions for Sergey or Victor, or if you have any ideas or any recommendations, do just write that in the chat, and we can bring it up on the screen. So we do have this one from Alex earlier, which was a really positive comment before the live stream started. I really appreciate that. And we also have Gwen, Faraday Academy, in the chat. I just want to give a shout out to her. She has an awesome YouTube channel. There's lots of great interviews with people, View, I think Django as well. Do go check out her YouTube channel as well. She's always really supportive of other YouTubers, so just want to show a little bit of love back. So where were we? Right, so your projects. So I wanted to give you some feedback on what I see straight away. So it's great that you've really embraced this and you're encouraging your engineers to share their knowledge, because I think you do have a lot of engineers. Last time we spoke, you think you had over 40. I'm guessing that's probably increased since then. And I think you have a lot of knowledge there, and also the community can benefit from that, but can also give back. And that's why I really love open sourcing projects, because you get to, how can I explain it, lower the barrier to entry of that project. A project could be really great, but the barrier to entry might be really high. So for someone to benefit from it, they need to have a really good understanding of the context already. But when you get other people in the community looking at it, raising questions, it might make you think, actually, we're making a lot of assumptions there. Let's highlight that or explain it a bit more, give a little demo or bullet points or image, whatever it is, to allow more people to benefit from the project. And which is like on my projects on our GitHub community organization, I love it when new people join and say, hey, I'm new to open source. Where can I start? And I always say, can you have a look? And what doesn't make sense, let us know. And then for the next person, hopefully we can fix that and make sense. So we're making it better all the time. So let's have a look at this. So my first impression, I don't know if everyone watching is the same. I think it looks really good. I see no people here. So when you add people to the organization, I'm guessing you've got quite a few already. They need to make it public on their profile. And when I see an organization with no people on it, I do get a little bit concerned. I just feel that maybe it's not a very active, or it's something that people started and didn't continue. So I would highly recommend try and get your people. They have to do it themselves. Like I said, you can't do it for other people. And also then, if it appears on their profile and they appear here, then they're more likely to get involved and be more proud of what is there. They're going to add value to make it better because they're kind of associating their name to it. So it's kind of like a two-way street. So that's my first impression. You've got topics, you've got top languages and a mix of those. I think that's great. 10 repositories. The other thing that jumps out to me is got different naming conventions, and it might not be a big deal. So some people in the chat might be thinking, hey, that's not a big deal, right? One project has this, one project has that. But for me, I don't mind which one you use. It's about being consistent, and I think what else isn't consistent in the projects. So I think a lot of the time it's just about being consistent within your organization. I don't think you've got anything camel cased, so you haven't got a third type in there. It's just the two. So anyone watching, if you want to raise some issues about some of these points we mentioned so they don't get forgotten, I'm sure Sergey and Victor would appreciate having some issues raised. And then if you raise the issue, people watching, you'll get that green square for today. So highly encourage that. So if anyone wants to raise an issue on Cypress demo, just say maybe rename to make it hyphenated to be consistent with the rest of the projects. Well, hopefully so far that's helpful, but both of you do jump in if you have any points, but if not, I can continue giving some feedback, and we actually can jump into a particular repo. We do have some comments in the chat as well. Yes, so Gaushik also says, let me bring that up on the screen so people can see the one that I'm talking about. So again, just reiterate what I said is no people in the organization. Again, I think that just doesn't feel, I don't know what the word is, just doesn't feel right. I don't think it's bad, but it just doesn't feel like if you go to a restaurant and it's empty. I don't know. I always worry. I think, well, why is nobody eating here? There's nothing wrong with it. Okay. But so
I already have my notes here.
Awesome.
Like no people here, and naming convention.
I also put some notes during our conversation, and about the naming convention, we were thinking about it, but not about the naming, but about the style guides, and also it was one of the points for improvement, because I'm not pretty sure that this repository has some style guides and has some links, linters, and things like that. Because to tell you the truth, it's very important thing, especially as far as we're taking care about the quality. We need to guarantee that our code also met our requirements to quality, so it's written correctly. It doesn't have issues, any kind of issues. So yeah, we also put it well, basically for managing all the open source stuff. We created a project with some tasks, so we plan to improve and this project. So yeah. So a few things are planned and some are work in progress.
So we have a question from Gwen. I want to bring that up in a second. But you reminded me about this project. So when I was talking to Sergey and Victor before the live stream, they said, don't worry, we've got a plan. It's in this private repo. And I'm like, what? We're talking about open source. Why is it private? Because people could add suggestions. So they added me to the repo just before the live stream. But all of you in the chat, please give them hell, give them some grief, get them to open, so you can see it's private, get them to open source this project so they can give suggestions and ideas. They can't, move things around in the columns, but maybe they can log ideas and you could then close them. Again, I think it just reinforces that transparency. But we're going to get to that because Gwen asks an awesome question, which is, there's a lot of repos, which is good. Oh, some of them don't have readmes apparently. Okay, let me share a link to the organization in the chat if anyone wants to go kind of have a nose around and suggestions and so on. But apparently, okay, some don't have readmes, sorry, and some haven't been updated in a while. What's the future for these repos? I think that's a really good question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and actually, it's my responsibility here. About readmes, I tried to put there as much information as I thought is required. For example, for Cypress demo project, it was a part of the actually Cypress demo preparation. I wanted to make video sessions. That's why you may see in README there are some commit hashes just to go through the stages during the demonstration. For others, yep, I'm not sure that I updated them a lot because editors, you don't use all the technologies during the development, because very often, from my perspective, I get some project for, say, Web.io automation, and I update it, and then I update this demo. For others, if I don't question it, I do it. I hope we will actualize them, because none of these projects and none of these tools is dead. They still have new versions, they have some improvements, but we are not always working it, and apparently I'm the only one who supports this. So I expect when we will in the community involve more engineers, we'll have this updated.
Okay.
So still, thanks for your comment.
I think having a README is a really good point. I think it's just so important, even if it is just a brief overview of what the goal of the repo is. Like kind of like a title and maybe just one short paragraph. I think it's really important. Again, I do get nervous when I see a repo with no README, because usually by default a README is created. It might just contain the title. So anyone watching, go to this project and add a README just maybe with a title, and you can even copy the about here on the right hand side. Just add it to the README. It just kind of adds value immediately, because people might not see it on the right. Adds a bit of value, and then it kind of prompts the Utorr team to then add more to it and take it further along. I know it's not easy to maintain open source projects, so I do get that. It is easy for us to come along and say, oh, you should do this, you should do this. It's not easy. It does take time, but the great thing is the community want to help. So we do have another comment from Gaushik, which I think is actually really useful, which is something I was going to dig into slightly later. But they say not all the repo have a code of, I think a COC, code of conduct, as well as a license. And I think that is quite important too. And the way you can check this for anyone watching, you don't have to be an admin on the project. You can just look, you can go to Insights, and then you can go to Community, and you can see the recommendations by GitHub. So let me just remove this so we can see it all. So code of conduct is missing, contributor file, license. I mean, issue template and pull request template are less of a priority, but I think, yeah, the first three are quite useful, and it's quite easy. Hit propose and can pick one of the popular, like there's code, open source. What's it called? Code of conduct. It's by it comes up if I click propose. There's two that you can choose from, and I always choose the first one. But there are things that you can do. But yeah, that's really important as well. I think it just I think it's important.
That was one of my questions about the licensing of code and what is a proper way of licensing. How should we? Well, actually, I wasn't familiar with this functionality of GitHub about simple adding of the relay. I was thinking that GitHub has sort of a default license, but I'm not familiar with that. But if we can do it in a few clicks, that's just great. We will edit as soon as possible.
Okay, that's cool. And people watching, don't forget to raise these issues and raise them on every pull request that is missing these items. Let them get lots of notifications, and you can get your green squares. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about in a minute, but also
I'm just imagining my attempt to merge all those pull requests and handle all those things. Oof.
it's
It would be
it'll be fun. I think it's good. And then when you start getting conflicts and you start getting people submitting the same piece of work, you have to accept the first one, apologize to the second one. They still get their green square, so that work's not going to kind of get, effort's not going to be wasted. But it's all part of the fun and definitely keeps you busy. We had a great suggestion. I can't pronounce that name, so apologies. But they suggested creating a template repo, and I actually haven't tried this. I was going to talk about GitHub Actions later on, but this is probably another way to solve some of these issues, which is create a template repo, and then you can create other repos from that. And that's a really interesting one. I haven't actually done that myself. That might be something I'd look into for our community organization as well. That's really useful.
Yeah. By the way, maybe there are some recommendations by GitHub for handling. I saw that they have some templates for a good first issue, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a point for contributors. Maybe they have some recommendations for some boilerplate repository for open source project or something.
They do have a lot of documentation around that, and they do have templates. They are updating all the time. So off the top of my head, I can't think of anything in particular. There are labels that they have by default, like good first issue, but there are some other labels that are getting quite popular, which are ones like not good first issue. What is it? First timers only. So if you're new to the project, then you're welcome to pick this issue up. And if you're not new, then they're not recommended for you to do. So it's trying to encourage people to get into it. So I think that's really important. I actually just want to take a little bit of a break here for a second, looking at GitHub, and it's something that I'm keen to briefly discuss, and hopefully here's some input from the people watching as well. So what was the turning point for both of you, or maybe other people who aren't on the live stream in the company, for you to realize that actually open sourcing this is beneficial? So I know when we spoke a long time ago, I was like, open source everything, open source by default, and only make it private if you need to, and storing passwords, as I always say, passwords and tokens and keys in a repo is not a reason to make it private. But what kind of nudged you to open source it? Was it any particular benefit, anything that you read or anything I said, or did I just bother you too much that every time we spoke I went, you haven't open sourced any projects yet, and you thought, right, enough with Eddie, let's shut him up. If we make some open source, we can keep him quiet.
Well, Sergey?
Yeah, actually I remember our first video call, and it was I was amazed with your passion about the open source, and I thought like, oh, I don't understand what is it, but I really want to have it. That was my first thought. So we raised this question like many times internally, and after that we had a talk together in when I came to London like a year ago, and it's just this thought started to be more prioritized, and then we had a talk with the Victor, and then we realized, okay, maybe we should create something and just to try it. So it's going to be the first step. So, and step by step we will see what kind of benefits we can get from it, and yeah, that's my point, that we will see benefits in the progress. So the most important part is just to start, and then we will see. And that's something that our companies in Ukraine, I haven't heard actually, but they don't use open source. So I thought, okay, maybe I can be one of the first one.
That's good. I
Yeah.
think being first is important. Definitely. I agree. And what other challenges have you had, apart from the ones that we're discussing now? Did you have challenges from the people in the team not wanting to get involved or not wanting any of their work to be open source?
Well, currently on first push people to join it. So yeah, currently I'm working on this during my leisure time, and I'm not having a lot of leisure time now actually. So yeah, it might looks like a bit abandoned, but I hope that we will involve more engineers. Maybe some newcomers will want to join it. Maybe after this, we'll have a few person who came and said, "I want to improve. I want to share my results. I have my project, and I want it to be visible and to make it open source." So yeah, currently I can't push the team to spend their on that, but I hope that when they'll join, they will have everything set up, and it should have effort from them to dig into these projects, and they can just start sending issues, pull, contributing. So we need to have this all set up, and then it can be improved.
I have few more
Sorry,
thoughts
Sergey,
about
go on.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it should be started from HR department. What I mean is that it should be like part of the value to contribute in open source project. We should show it, for example, in our onboarding process that we have open source project and you can take part in it. So it shouldn't be like only one message to Slack chat, our like general chat, like, hey guys, do you want to contribute? And that's it. So it should be a process in company if we want to develop it. So it should be like a long process, and all teams should be involved, not only, for example, Victor in this case. So like we should have a call, and that's why actually we are here. I just wanted to understand like what we need, how we can start, and it's like a little motivational push as well for us to process.
However, I need to mention
Sure.
one of our colleagues came to me in direct messages in Slack, and he said, "I heard that you're doing some open source stuff. I want to gather some documentation and share it. I've created my own repository. Feel free to fork it and use it there." I don't know why he decided not to move it integrated to the organization, but I said, okay, fine, great. We'll just fork it. It will be as it is. And yeah, we have some first step from the team to join this journey.
I think that's really good that you encouraged them to do it, even though they did it under their own account and you forked it. The only challenge is your fork won't be kept up to date, and you'll have to look at doing that. I don't know if you can do that with a GitHub action. You probably could, but it would need permission to do it. But it might be able to do it. Like we have our own community organization, and I always say to people they can move their projects in if they want more visibility, and then we can move it out later on if they want. So that's an interesting challenge. Anyone watching, if you want to get your green square for today, I've noticed another issue. DS store file has been committed, so raise an issue. They need to remove that file and also put maybe a git ignore so that it doesn't get committed again. I mean, Faraday Academy, Gwen brings up a really good point. Actually, I should bring it up on the screen, and actually ties into what I was just saying. And it's something that actually I discuss with people a lot. So for me, that DS store file's being committed. On all my commits, it will never get committed because I have a global git ignore for all my custom files that my system produces or the tools that I use produce. And I don't like to have in the git ignore something, because you'll need one for people on Mac, people on Windows, people who use VS Code, people who use WebStorm or whatever IDE they use and all the rest. And then git ignore can get huge. So I've always said I'll put the ones that are specific to this project. If you have like a build directory where generated files get generated from the project, no matter what IDE you're using, no matter what system you're on. But then this is a really good point by Gwen. It says you need to make it easy for people. So I might get how to manage my global git ignore for my system, but other people might not. So then now, having read that comment, which is why I love having the conversations with the community, I've actually changed my thinking. And I'm thinking, you know what? In the git ignore, add everything to cover all the systems. Make it easier for people. What's a few extra lines in a git ignore file? Nothing. It's me, I suppose, trying to be a purist, which is kind of silly. It's purist is probably the wrong word, but you all know what I mean. So yeah, I think it's important to make it easy for everybody. So anyone raising that issue, you can raise a pull request to delete that DS store file. You can also add to that pull request to git ignoring DS store files. And if you think of any other files that are generated by other systems like Windows, etc., then also ignore those files and git ignore. Oh, there is a git ignore here, interesting enough. But I'm guessing it doesn't have the DS store file. So you have idea, so you'll be ignoring the IntelliJ or WebStorm or whatever we use in the IntelliJ suite. But yes, DS store probably could get added, and any other files that are similar as well. Just again, to keep it clean, make it easier for people is really, really important. Awesome. Okay, I've lost my thought a bit. Right, so we're coming up with some actual concrete examples here. What about, okay, and I've said this to you quite a few times before, but it's really good that you're doing the open source side. But what about doing maybe some supporting videos on what these repositories mean? Again, make it easier. I'm a bit guilty of this. I do live streams on my repos, but then there isn't like a concise 2 minutes or 3 minutes, just like, what is this? How can you get involved? So actually, maybe that's something I'm going to do next week. Thank you for that. This is why I love talking through things, right? Just kind of getting ideas myself. And it's something I think I've thought of in the past, but then just forgot about because I got busy. But again, lowering that barrier to entry for people to contribute. You mentioned so your clients can see what you can do. But doing a video for it, like a 2-3 minute video, they can also see that, because I think your clients are all over the world and English is probably the language that you mostly use. So by doing a short, sorry, was that a yes or a no? Did you agree or disagree?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, cool. So doing a short video not only helps more contributors get involved, they can see that you're friendly, they can understand more about the project, but your clients could also see that you're really good at English and they can get a conversation with you. So if they were to hire you for a project, I don't know if hire is the right word, but they were to work with you on the project, then they know that if they get on a Zoom call or Slack call or whatever you use, that they're not worried that there might be some miscommunication in English as well. So again, I think there's just so many benefits. The more transparent you can be, the more I think it reinforces the community, the branding, and just all of that as a whole. And you'll notice that I meant say branding, not sales. No one wants to be sold to, right? So I just think it's great. I think more people will get involved. And I know you don't have a lot of time for the open source projects. Like you said, it's not your unfortunately, it's not your main focus. And I get that. And that happens at a lot of places. But if you get every day like an issue, and then the next day you get a pull request, an issue and pull request, then there are people contributing to what you're working to. I think that will give you the motivation and nudge to continue to work on it. You might not accept all the pull requests. You might comment and say, thank you very much, but we don't want to cover this area or whatever it is. Or you might give them some feedback so they can make some tweaks and then it can get accepted. Then I think it's important and shows the collaboration side. So when I look to hire people for my clients, I love to see people's GitHub profiles. And everyone thinks I want to look at their code. I actually don't care too much about the code. I'm actually looking to see how they collaborate with people, because people do say to me, well, what project should I contribute to? And I always recommend find a friendly and inclusive project, because they'll want to have you there. They'll be happy to have you there, and you'll be keen to do work or tweaks or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be big features, and actually smaller the better. So when I was doing a live stream a few weeks ago, some people suggested some repos they wanted to contribute to. So I found some things that they could do, and I helped them raise the issue, create the pull request. And one of them was actually just creating a code of conduct for the repo. And this was a popular repo. I'm talking maybe, I don't know, 3, 4, 5,000 stars and up, like quite popular. And the person in the community raised the pull request, and the person just closed the pull request. No comment, no thank you very much, we want a different code of conduct, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter, but just something polite and collaborative. And so my recommendation to them was not to contribute to that project. And in the future, it's worth looking at the closed pull requests and seeing how the project maintainers have replied. Not everything has to be accepted. They can get closed. And as a project maintainer myself, I understand that I can't accept everything. But it's important about kind of, putting a comment, or if a pull request has been raised and you're really busy and you can't look at it till next week, one thing that I like to try and do, and I'm sorry if I haven't done this to anyone watching, is put a comment into the PR saying, thank you very much for the PR, really busy at the moment, I will look in 3 days. Because I know what it's like when you raise a pull request, you're kind of waiting and get excited just to get that comment. Is it looking okay, or is it looking positive, and so forth. So again, it just shows that whole collaboration. And I know you, both of you and your teams and so on, you're all really friendly and awesome, and also really busy. So I highly recommend anyone watching to contribute to these projects. But I think also sometimes we can get busy and we just keep our messages quite short, and it's hard to and you haven't done this, I'm not saying you have, but I just think everyone is guilty of this, that they might write a short message back and then not realize how it could be misinterpreted, even across languages and time zones and cultures, etc. So definitely send some pull requests and issues. Yep. Sorry, say that again.
Yep. But that's a great point, and I've never thought of. Well, actually, when I interview engineers to my team, I usually share some GitHub repositories, even if they don't have create some demo project and share with it. And very often I send a pull request, or usually 2 requests to the repository, just to see how they reply and how they react to the pull request, because it's a good test to see how the person reacts on criticism. How can they work in team with their colleagues or team leads? So, but I wasn't thinking about it in terms of because it also can show our potential clients that we are open to communication, we are replying fast, and well, actually, it's also part of a demonstration. It's very good and interesting point. I guess Sergey we should think about it.
Yeah, agree. I just made a note about interviews with GitHub.
It is, and I know it's quite a privileged position to be able to have time to work on open source projects in your side. So I do take that in consideration when I'm hiring from my clients or myself. I don't expect everyone to spend like 4 hours a day on open source projects. But you're right, it is about the collaboration and getting involved in the conversation. So I do say to some of my community, when they say I haven't got time, I've got kids that I need to look after, I've got an elderly parent I need to look after, I do try and say if you can spend like 15 minutes a day just trying to get involved in the conversation. If someone else has raised an issue or raised a pull request, can you review it? Can you give any value back and say, I like this, but have you thought of this, or whatever it is? But it's just getting involved in the conversation. And I really believe the more and more I've done open source over the last 10, 15 years, I think open source is really not about code anymore. It's actually more about kind of community collaboration and communication. I think that's what it's more about. The coding side is more of a kind of a positive side effect. And we have Vivek saying, I've submitted 2 issues on the Cypress domain. And let me bring that up on the screen. That's awesome. I think that's great to hear. So if in doubt, if you should raise an issue, my advice to everyone watching is raise the issue. Always raise it. What's the worst going to happen? They say no thank you and they close it. I promise you nothing else will go wrong or bad or anything like that. It's not going to rain. It's not going to, I don't know, do anything bad. So you still get the green square. However, the license they need, I can create a pull request for. Yes, so what I would suggest is if you're unsure about what the pull request should be raised for, then I always say raise an issue, start the discussion. So your issue could be, what license do you want for this project? And then when they reply with license ABC, then you can raise a pull request with that license. So it's good to raise an issue first because it starts the conversation, and you can ask them to assign it to you so they don't do it themselves and so forth. So that's good. If you raise a pull request without raising an issue, bear in mind it's more likely to get closed because you haven't confirmed they want that feature. If it is just a one-line change or a text fix, then I always just raise the pull request. And if they don't want it, then they don't want it. But thank you very much for raising issues. If you see similar issues on other of their repos, raise those same issues so they don't get missed on other repos. So I find that things do get missed naturally, right? We're busy.
Sergey,
Sorry, say that again.
Sergey, it looks like we'll add a few more engineers to Utorr today. It looks that we'll send a few engineers to Utorr today because we'll see who contribute to the repositories, and we may ask for CV and maybe offer some projects. I guess it should also help our recruitment team. We are working all over the world and have engineers from different countries, and help our recruitment team.
Yeah, that's what we discussed. It can be like a part of the interview. Yeah, we can use it.
Yep, also. So one more question from my side. So we are actually, we discussed a few things that we should do with these repositories, this organization. But let's summarize. When we or some other company wants to start open source, say opening hub, create organization, and they, well, from my perspective, my first question was, what's next? What should I do next? I start adding the repositories, but basically I add repositories, and then what are my actions?
Okay, so again, looking at these, and you might have to repeat that question for me in a few minutes if I sidetrack again. I'm very guilty of getting distracted. So, Sergey, don't laugh. I saw that big grin. But having, I think someone mentioned that, someone did mention the template repo, but also like about your commit styles. So I see kind of different commit styles, some with uppercase, some with lowercase. There are commit standards. I'm sure you're using a branching standard as well, potentially. Okay, those are by Dependabot. But in terms of your branching standards, do you prepend your branch name with your GitHub username and then issue, then hyphen, or whatever you decide to do? I would have some docs on that so that it's consistent for all your repos. Also with your commits, I like using conventional changelog commit style. So therefore I can generate a changelog file on CI that shows me what's changed to which part of the project. You don't have to generate it from day one, but if your commits are written in the same style, then if you ever want to create it, then you can. And then by putting like the hash of the issue number in the commit, you can kind of click around going from a commit to an issue, from an issue to a commit, and all sorts of awesome stuff. So I highly recommend it. So I would say the next step is maybe set out a list of standards that you want. And you don't have to get this perfect from day one, but maybe help people understand how they can get involved and make it easier for them to get involved and make it easier for them to get their pull request accepted, right? So say if they do a great piece of work, no matter how small it is, I think the smaller the better, and that's another conversation. But if they do it, say, with the wrong commit message, or they use, I don't know, different style or something, then there's going to be that conversation back and forth. Whereas if you can remove the conversation back and forth on the non-important stuff and still have that conversation. So I'm not saying not to have the conversation, but talk about the more value add stuff rather than like projects that don't use a linter. And then they raise a pull request and people see people saying, you haven't got a space here, you haven't got a line break here, or you've got too many line breaks here. I'm like, have a linter. The user can get the feedback and then you can still have the conversations, but you can talk more about the value added stuff rather than those sort of less important. So I see you got like things like GitLab CI and also Travis as well. So for me, I wouldn't know where to look. It's a bit confusing to have two CIs. So again, I think if you can try and have that consistency across your repos, then if someone's familiar with one of your repos, then they can easily jump on to another repo because the consistency is there on the branching, the committing, the CI, etc. Hopefully I haven't missed anything in the chat. Sorry, go on.
Yep. I need to explain here why there are two different CIs, because my thought here was we make a demo and we want to show it can work on different CI. Say, client can
you broke up a bit there for a second, Victor.
Okay, go on with Travis. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now. I think your internet is going up and down. Your Wi-Fi.
Actually, my battery is very low. No, it's. Okay. I assume it's something related to battery. I'll have to find the charge. But the point here is that we want to show that this framework and this setup can work on GitLab CI or on Circle CI or on Travis or whatever CI you use. So it's just a part of a demo, basically. It's not a sort of a guarantee in the quality.
That makes sense. But I had to ask you to understand that. So I'm just looking in here really quick and to see if there's anything related to that. So I would then put something in the README to say we support GitLab CI and Travis CI coming soon, and you can mention the ones that you might have in the plan coming soon. So anyone watching wants to get a green square, raise an issue and ask, why do you have two CIs? What you said, Victor, is completely valid, but people don't know that. And it's really easy for me to say this. I'm sure, I guarantee 100%, if you look at my project, you'd pick up so many things and questions and improvements for me to make. So I'm not trying to say I have all the answers, but it's always easier for someone to review it, which is why whenever I hire someone new for a project or a team, the first thing I get them to do is review the project. And if they can't explain to us what the project does or how to set it up, or then there's something missing. It's not their fault, it's our fault. And to me, that adds a lot of value. So if anyone wants to get their green squares today or tomorrow, also look at my projects, my community projects, and just raise issues and ideas. Definitely raise them. Things that you notice, any questions, raise them. So yeah, so brilliant. So that's something you can add to the documentation. Right, back to your original question. I don't know if I kind of sidetracked too much. What's next? So I think it's like when you're doing performance testing and you're finding bottlenecks. You don't just have one bottleneck. You're going to find one bottleneck. Your application is going to improve, but then you're going to find another bottleneck, right? There's always things you continue to improve. I think with open source projects, they are living projects. And I know a lot of places, including my clients, say, I'll make it open source when it's perfect. And I guarantee you it's never perfect. We could have another conversation in 3 months and you would have put more information on here. You would have made lots of improvements, but there'll still be other things that I might spot or someone else would spot. And that's the beauty of having it open source, is about always improving it. So I don't think we could make a definitive list today, but we could make a kind of a list of ideas of what we see. Another thing that jumps out for me is you have no tags, you have no releases. I think that would be important to have the tags as well. I think that would be really good. And these pull requests are very old. So if you don't need these, I would close these, because this, again, for me, coming to contribute to your project, I would be a bit concerned seeing pull requests that are so old and they have no comments on it. If it said something like, we will merge after our next release or something, then there's a reason why it's hanging around. But my concern would be, well, if I raise a pull request, you're never going to look at it. So again, it's just that impression. I'm not saying that's correct, because these are PRs by bots, but it's just that impression that people get. It doesn't show that it's it's a priority on things to do. Just some more feedback there. So another issue, if someone wants to raise another issue and say, Dependabot PRs, do you keep them, ? Or whatever you want to write. Write something and have a look. Then what does everyone else think watching? What to do next? We've got some comments. So we've got Stephen says, as a template, you would be allowed the customer to use Travis. Right? Yeah, he guessed right. So I guessed wrong. I thought maybe you were migrating from one CI to the other, but Stephen guessed right. You're trying to support different platforms. So again, it's just making it really clear and concise. I'm interested to see what other questions and ideas people have. Do write in the chat. Let us know what suggestions you have, what challenges you might have at your workplace, and we can discuss as well. And we've got Mike talking about the Dependabot PRs. Just do the security ones and backlog the others. Yeah, auto merge is an option as well. I don't know, I get a bit nervous about auto merging stuff. I don't know why. Maybe I'm just a bit old. I can see the issue numbers increasing. That's good. 1 minute ago, 4 minutes ago. Nice. Get those green stars. Green stars? Green squares. And still see no people added. Message your team. We got over 40 people, right? I want to see before the end of the stream at least like one row. That's like 4 or 6 people. I'm not sure how many. What else have we got in the chat? Can an Android application be open sourced? Can you give some light on that? Yeah, anything can be open source. Android app, iOS app, documentation. What else? Anything. It's open source. Yes, it started off with code, but you see people doing legal documents. I mean, there's recipes. There's so many things, because all of those documents, even if it's code or a document, but they're all kind of text, as it were. A binary is different. That's why a lot of people do their sketches as SVGs, because then it's XML and it's like text. That can be improved and versioned and change over time as people see it. Stephen, thank you very much for raising your issues. Yes, I see them. That's good. Everyone else, keep raising it. Get your green square. So you got manual QA docs. Was this the one you were talking about that you forked from another colleague? 7th of June, 3 months ago. Yet nothing's changed. Someone raised an issue. What's happening next on this project? It's it happens, right? You put a repo as a placeholder. I think that makes sense. But I think, again, going to that restaurant analogy, people want to contribute to projects that are active, right? If you go to a restaurant, you want to see people are sitting there and so on. I mean, you could also do some live streams of you contributing to these repo so that other people can you can encourage other people to get involved. I think you have those really big, crazy projects, or that isn't really busy. Or take the restaurant analogy, you have people queuing down the road. I wouldn't go to that restaurant, and I probably wouldn't go to those projects because it's too busy to keep up. You can't do that. It's having that balance. I think the majority of projects that get kind of contributions are in that middle kind of sweet spot where they're active, but not so active that if you go away for a week, you come back and the whole project has changed because 1,000 pull requests have been merged in and so forth. And everyone watching, I want to reiterate, no pull request is too small. And I guarantee you, the smaller the pull request, the better, because it is more likely to get merged. And I see that all the time in our community, big pull requests. And it takes me like hours to review. And I just think, why did you spend a week doing that? Why didn't you just spend 30 minutes, do a one-line change that adds value, we can get it merged in, and everyone else can benefit from that value, reduces conflicts and so on. Some of these don't have tags. The poor Cypress demo, by the way, is feeling a bit left out. It doesn't have any tags on it. Hey, we've got one person. Awesome.
I'll need to explain why we have only one person. Honestly, I'm not the owner of this organization, so we'll need to ask owner to make a few more people public. So I was able just to open myself, and for others we'll need to contact the one of our team members just to open the others.
Okay. And let me just bring up some more questions. This is an interesting one by Carl. And this is one that I fight with all the time. So he says, what are the legitimate, valid concerns? I'm going to kind of rephrase that and say, are there any valid concerns for companies to make their IP open for all? I'm guessing you have projects that are private. Yes, okay, you got a nod. Okay, why would those not be open source? Maybe we'll start with that and we can dig a bit deeper.
Well, as far as we are doing some project for some specific companies and for some specific projects, actually, we can't open it. We have some NDAs, agreements, etc. So, and usually they are the property of the company. So
Okay.
obviously we can't open it. But some of our projects that are just demos, and there you may see that we do not use a lot of external applications. We don't even, one of the most popular tests in during the interview is test the Gmail or test Google. We don't even use that there because there are some few, by the way, open source demo projects, and we demonstrate our automation skills on that demo projects because we don't want to also violate something or have some issues there.
Sure.
So yeah, projects that we create for our customers are hidden, and they are usually they actually belong to that companies. But the stuff that we create, we can share it.
Okay, that makes sense. And do you have any projects that you've created that are not open source?
You mean my personal projects or something?
No, so for the company. So not a repo that's for your client. Do you have any projects that are specifically and solely for Utorr are not open source?
I'm not pretty sure about the project. If I'm not mistaken, there are a few internal documents, but probably
Okay.
Sergey can tell about it more.
Okay. And
Like
you
you
also
mean
have
this
this
is
one as
documentation
well.
which we prepared.
Any repos that you have that are private, that aren't your client repos. Like for example, this one. I'll bring up this one. So how come this one is private? Why isn't this one public?
I was just I was a bit scared about sharing it to open source. I know that a few weeks ago GitHub opened their roadmap to public, and I've seen it, and it was just wow. But I was a bit scared, honestly. So I decided to put it as
What
internal process.
what scared you? This is where we can kind of get a better understanding. What scared you about making it public?
Uh, well, as you can see, there's a task on discussion of this session, and luckily it's done. We have this session today. It's great. So first, I didn't want to spoil this. I don't want to create spoilers for this session, and also, well, basically, it doesn't have a sensitive information in here. So yeah, probably we can make it public. Sergey, what do you think about it?
Positive.
Okay, then we should make it public.
Okay, awesome. And then I can't, I've only got read permission, so I can't add anything, but I can maybe raise an issue. I was going to say, don't forget to do some project intro videos and project demo videos of how to use some of your projects. I know they might get out of date quite quickly, which is why people kind of wait a bit. But then if you wait a bit, you're not lowering the barrier to entry like sooner.
We were thinking about it, but the problem here is that it's sort of a time-consuming thing to set the demo up, do recording. From my experience, it doesn't take. You can't do it from the first shot. You have to do it a few times because something went wrong. Usually, my cats start making noise in the room, and I have to record it one more time. So it's time consuming. That's why we decided to postpone video demonstrations. But I guess we should keep it in mind, and yep, probably raise an issue just to we don't want to forget about it. So yep, probably we should fire issue for that.
Yeah, definitely raise lots of issues. And when it's open source, then people can raise the issues for you so you don't forget. And you might reword it. So when I'm on a live stream, I do say, oh, can someone raise this issue for me? Don't worry too much about the title. If you just mention this and this, it'll remind me. Then after the live stream, I go to the issue. I might reword it slightly to be a bit more, I don't know, match my style or something. But then at least it's, I won't forget. But it's good that you've got so you have got view licenses and open projects, so that's good. So you have got these things, but there's no harm in people watching raising the same issue on every single repo that's missing it. Style guide and linters, it's in progress. So yeah, you get to see people will get to see where you're at. And I think in all the readmes of the repos, once this is open source, it would be good to have a link to this so people then can kind of get a feel of what's coming up, maybe not raise duplicates, or I would personally convert these to issues rather than leave them just as cards. So have them on the project board, but have them as issues, because then people can click on them and then they can add a comment if they've got an idea or suggestion, etc. and so on. So
Okay, good.
yeah. Steven says, definitely a DevOps piece for all companies to go open source, so they can go in and give you a risk analysis and do clever things like script out internal IPs, strip out any prod data. Yeah, I I had one client once, and they had a lot of history, so we had in their repo that was private. The problem with having a repo that is private to begin with and then make it public later is you don't know what happened in the history. Did someone add a password or a key or any sensitive information, and maybe they deleted it out later in a future commit. So some of the solutions to that is either ditch the history, which no one really wants to do. I know they like to keep the history, or to try and run some automated tools. And I think there are things you can buy, etc., and so on. But I always get nervous about that because they might miss something. Like I think it was someone in my community pointed out that if you commit your Discord token, it checks your repo and it will alert you and then invalidate the token, which I think is epic. But most places don't do that. So I think if you open source it from the beginning, then everyone's got that in their mind that it's a public repo, no private stuff. I understand for your client information, it's very, for your client projects, it's very different. So just talking about that, generally speaking. Just trying to catch up with the chat here. If anything jumps out in the chat that you want to talk about, let me know. If it sparks any ideas, let me catch up. I'm going to refresh this page, see if it's gone public yet. No, it hasn't gone public yet. I was, fingers crossed, I was hopeful. Not yet. What else have we got? Try and catch up with the chat. I'm conscious of time. I've kept you for like over an hour, so we'll keep going for a little bit longer. I know you're a couple of hours ahead and probably dinner time where you are. So I don't want to keep you for too much longer.
Eddie,
Yes.
have you thought about the own product, like to consult companies to move to open source? Like it's like a hot topic actually.
I could definitely talk about it all day, and I would love to do it. And I kind of do it as part of my consultancy to try and encourage places to open source their project. I did a high street bank in the UK, also did Crossrail, which is a government project for the new train that goes horizontally across London, underground. I did do those, but they are sometimes quite soul destroying. I'm actually glad you brought that up, because on both of those, I spent months educating the people at the top that don't know what open source is, explaining them, drawing diagrams, doing demos, showing them all the benefits, also showing them some of the downsides. There aren't that many, so that was a very quick conversation. But things like they would ask questions like, but can people just change our code and then ruin it for our users or our clients? Like, no, everything that changes has to be approved by you. And then it asks questions like, but I don't want them to have our client data. And it's like, no, the data is a different thing. It's not, you're not putting your data on GitHub. You're putting your source code on GitHub and your documentation, etc. And so I go through like many weeks, and both of those projects were months in terms of not building the project, in terms of getting them to open source it. And what was soul destroying about it, and wait for it, it's a kicker. Everyone finally said yes. Everyone said yes. We're in a meeting, got all the C-suite people, CTOs, etc. Everyone says yes. I'm like, yes, finally! Months and months of hard work, documentation, diagrams, etc. has paid off. But when it came to signing on the dotted line, or like emailing me, because I wanted it in writing that we could open source it. So just emailing from all these people just saying yes, yes, not just verbally, right? I don't want anyone to, in the future to say, well, I didn't agree when they verbally had. So when I wanted it in writing, no one would confirm. They were all waiting for the other people to confirm. So I needed like confirmation from like, I don't know, say like 8 people. And everyone was just waiting for somebody else to say yes, then jump on board. It was like kind of, they were like sheep. And so it never happened. And that was soul destroying for me, because not only we spent a long time doing it, and they were all on board. Every single one said yes, but wouldn't actually commit to it. And so that was quite hard. Just some dinosaurs that kind of don't understand it. And they said they understood it even after explaining it. But then also one person was quite honest and said, look, I retire in 5-10 years. I just want an easy life. I just want to do enough to keep things moving along why should I do something so drastic that could give me lots of hassle for my remaining 5-10 years in my career? And I kind of understand that, but it's a shame to have someone who's a decision maker, high up the chain, who wants to do the bare minimum and not rock the boat. How can a technology company or any company innovate if they're not willing to do more modern practices, let's just say? So yeah, that was a bit soul destroying.
Yeah. So next time you will work with a smaller company, maybe with another type of people. I don't know.
True. And yeah, there are other challenges, maybe not related directly to open source. And this is me kind of taking a bit of a detour. But to give you another example, so yeah, working with startups a lot better. People are more modern, they get it. But then there are other challenges, because let me give you one quick example. So I won't mention any names, but I was asked to go do some DevRel, so do some open source work, build a community, developer relations, and promote their open source product for a startup. And went through all the meetings, 3 weeks of effort, came up with like a high level draft strategy of what we could do over the next 12 months. They loved it. Really great conversations. Probably spent quite a few days, this is unpaid, just showing to them what I can do and what we should do and so on. They loved it. Even the C-suite people loved it. But then they didn't sign the contract and I didn't start. And I was like, kind of, what's wrong? Everyone seemed happy, everything's agreed. What's going on? Someone came back from holiday, and it was someone from the marketing department. And they said, oh, if Eddie's going to do all these live stream videos, social media posts on tech stuff, on coding about our open source project and so on, does that mean it's a threat to the marketing director in terms of their KPIs, because they're kind of like trying to build up socials and all the rest? And so there was a lot of challenge around that, and it didn't work out. So they were kind of trying to, suppose they didn't want they need to get 10 likes, I don't know, a tweet or whatever, and they thought, right, if I get 15, are they going to go? Is it more work for them? And my reply to them was, no, I'm here to help you and drive traffic to your stuff. I'm not a permanent person and I'm a contractor. So I'm here to make you look better. So you say to your boss, Eddie's doing great, he's helping me out, let's keep him on, let's extend him and so forth. Not, I don't want your job, and I'm approaching it from a different point of view, from a technical point of view rather than from the business point of view. But yeah, so that person put up so much of a fuss that I was just like, look, it's just too much hassle. You've obviously got some politics issue and I don't want to cause problems. I think there are always challenges. It's part and parcel of running a business or being part of the community. I had something in our community recently where 2 people did a similar amount of work, not a similar amount of work. They did the same, like imagine, right? Okay, so we've got your repo open here. And if I go to one of the other repos, I think, I don't think there's a pull request for it. But let's just assume one of these issues. So let's see. So missing license on the project. So say if 5 people created you 5 PRs with the same piece of work, maybe slightly differently. Okay, with a license, it's more copy and paste. But then you've got to, which ones do you accept? So I always go for the one that submitted it first. But then I found people are just raising pull requests and saying, oh, it's not quite ready, so they can get in the list, in the pull request list first, and then spend the next week adding more to it to finish it. And it's all these sorts of challenges. But I think that's part of the fun, really. And you're going to come across these, and I look forward to hearing what sort of challenges you have and how you come across them, because you want everyone to feel safe and welcome and so forth.
Yeah, it looks like we'll have to have another stream in half a year to discuss how it's go on. Because it's start of a great journey, I guess.
It is, and it sparks so many conversations. Like I've had so many ideas from the community, the people watching, writing questions, and the ideas that you've both talked about today. I mean, even like Stephen brings up a point here that some projects people might think it's not worth open sourcing. I think if you've created a project and it's not private, there's nothing private in there for whatever reason, then I think it's good to make it open source. You never know what value that adds to someone else, or if someone sees it and they want to start a conversation with you about doing a similar project or getting you to help them with something around that. I think it's just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of an analogy and I can't think of one. I want to, tonight try and think of a good one. But I think it's worth kind of open sourcing as much as possible. Yes, it might not go very far, but I think it is good to have that conversation. But then it makes a good point trying to do one thing and do it well. It's hard, and Stephen's obviously getting technical here and saying Git history can be manipulated however you want. It can. Don't manipulate it if someone has already got the history, because that causes lots of conflicts and pain. But yeah, Git is very powerful and you can almost do everything. Sorry, Stephen, I've missed on lots of your comments. I'll have to catch up on those if I haven't missed anything. If I have missed anything, everyone just copy and paste and repost it and we'll see. But I am conscious of everyone's time. So everyone watching, what questions do you have for me? I've talked too much. What questions do you have for Sergey and Victor as well, and ideas? Don't forget to raise those issues. Get the GitHub green square for today. And don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. And subscribe if you haven't already, because obviously this is an awesome channel.
I already did it.
Thanks. I'm obviously a bit biased.
And I have one more question to you, Eddie. Yeah. Let's imagine that you're staying in front of 150 CEOs and CTOs. What would you tell them in few words about open source? How would you sell them this idea? Why I'm asking it, because in September I will be on an event as a coach and facilitator, and there will be around 150 CEOs and CTOs from Ukrainian companies, like mid-size, 50, 100 people. By the way, Victor, it will be in Odessa, so we will meet each other finally. Yeah. So, what are you interested to know from them, like from the open source perspective? So I could use your answer and to ask them about it, like when I meet them in there. So I just interested to know what is better to ask them to show them the power of open source.
Okay, so maybe let me try and start off with the most basic, and we can dig into further details. So I would start off with maybe making sure everyone's on the same page, that they know what open source is. And what I mean by that is, I try to give an analogy, and I always say it's social coding, and people don't get that. So I say to them, well, you know what social media is, right? You know Instagram, your friends or your family post pictures of their holiday or their cat or whatever it is. People can like it and they can comment on it. Whereas open source takes it a step further and allows people to make changes to your post. So you post your code and people can like it, they can comment on it. But if they want or they see any improvements, they can also make changes to it. And depending on your license, yes, they can also use it potentially in their project, etc. and so forth. But when they use it in their projects, some licensing says if they make any improvements, they need to submit it back and all the rest. So I try not to go into too much detail into the licensing side just at this stage, because then it scares people off as well. So I try and use the Instagram analogy that people then can make changes, but you have to approve them, so you still have control. I think that gets people on a kind of like similar sort of playing field. And what was the second part of your question?
Like, what should I haven't constructed actually the question. Like, I'm interested in what to ask people to. I will write you via email. Actually, it's better.
Well, maybe, I don't know, you gave me an idea. Maybe this, if I just say something small on it, I think I talk a lot about open source and the benefits to all the companies, etc., and so on. There are so many benefits. Maybe we could turn this around, and something you could ask them and say, what are your challenges at the moment? And maybe give them some prompts, like saying, are you having trouble having good quality code or projects? Are you having trouble with not good documentation, so your onboarding isn't great? Are you having challenges or trouble hiring people? And when they all go, yeah, I have this challenge, I have this challenge, and so forth, you say, well, silver bullet. Okay, there are no silver bullets, but a really good way to solve all of that is open source your project, and it will help with that. And you can dig into more details and how it will help. That's something I might have to try as well. So again, I love these conversations because it kind of makes me think of these things as well, because these are conversations I have a lot all the time. But
have you noted everything?
I haven't, but I am recording this live stream so I can re-watch it. And I think, the way we discuss and talk about it makes me think of things slightly differently, and I kind of improve on the way I explain it. So we've got a few questions from Stephen. I am watching that time. We probably should finish in about 10 minutes at max. But Stephen asked about the company history, and this is actually really, really interesting. I do like this story. So let's bring that up, and let's talk a bit about the company history. So I will give you a clue. Sergey was not born as a tester with staff of over 40 people. He had to work and build up to it. So I'll let him tell you the story of how he got to where he is now.
Yeah. It started, I was a key engineer for 4 years, and I was simple manual key engineer, and we worked with the complex projects related to civil engineering stuff and mechanical stuff. And then I realized that I don't want to work in office, and I want to move to remote. And it was like 6 years ago or 7, I don't remember. And then I moved to Bali, and on Bali I worked there, and in parallel I had a project, Germany project, it was sports community, and it was like a social media, and realized that I couldn't cover all type of tests by my own. I couldn't do a stress test. I couldn't do a security test in penetration by my own. And I could silly make an API automation using SOAP UI, but I was like a newbie in it, and I tried and I did it, but it was like hard for me. And in that time, I realized that I want to have a team who can jump like a special force and to fix everything in a QA processes and to cover all type of tests which needed for business. Like if we have sensitive data, okay, we have QA engineer who can close it. If we will have a huge marketing, so we need to scalability testing, performance tests, and so on. So that's why, during the next half year, this thought was only in my mind. And then I met one guy, and he was a junior QA engineer, and we started to work together, and I provided him a project. And then I started to learn how to sell, because I was newbie in it as well, because I was a freelancer, and I didn't know about business at all. So, and then just step by step, I hired HR, I hired sales, and then just project by project, new engineers, new sales, new people in company, and we fully remote. That's our power, because when this COVID happened, nothing happened to our company. So we have structured processes inside. So it's very helpful for a remote team, and everybody's understand what they should do So yeah, that's our story. That's our story. And it's like, I don't know if you begin in like Ukraine, test on request.
Nice. And how many people do you have in the company now?
Nothing changed from our last meeting. Like now it's stabilization, like stabilization process. Yeah, and because of this COVID, it's just we raised, and then just stabilized. Like nothing happened for our clients. Just one of them we lost because of this. But in general, everything good. Yeah, and I think we will double our business during the next year.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
huge plans.
Sounds good. Carl, I missed this in the chat earlier, so Carl, apologies. But it's a really good point. I think a lot of companies are nervous about making their projects open source because one, people will find security holes, they think, whereas most people don't want to exploit it, they want to fix it. But also a lot of companies think someone will take their code and set up a competitive business. And I think a lot of business owners are like that. And I can't remember who said this. Was it Gary V or someone else? I can't remember.
Like don't care about competitors or something like that.
It was. I want to look in the camera directly when I say this. So I won't be able to see everyone's Sergey and Victor's reaction, but I just love this comment. It's not mine. Like I said, I'm stealing it from somebody else. They said, "No one is gonna steal your dumb ass project." Because they have their own dumbass project. Okay, they might have not said project, they might have said idea. No one's going to steal your business idea because they have their own dumbass business ideas. And it's really true, right? I don't think it's very rare to see things get stolen because people have got their own ideas that they want to do and build on and so forth. So a lot of the old places are nervous about that, but I just don't think it's the same anymore. I just don't think it's the same anymore. I really think this is an old way of thinking, but I do know a lot of people still think that way. Like I have friends or acquaintances that I know. It's Eddie, I need some advice on how to build an app. Just can you give me some pointers? Yeah, sure. Let's just jump on a call, or before COVID, let's go for a coffee or whatever. Okay, I'll bring an NDA so you can sign it. And it's like, I'll tell you what, where you can put that NDA. I'm not signing anything. Either you want to talk about it or you don't. And it's just so crazy. I mean, I open source my startup idea, which is currently on pause at the moment and so forth. But yeah, it's 100% open source. I just don't see the benefit personally. To the benefit of keeping it private. There's more benefits to have it public. Okay, I am conscious of time. So Stephen has asked a few more questions. Let's have a look. I want to bring up this question here. Stephen said, I signed an NDA for a microsite last week. Wow, I get all my NDAs checked by my solicitors, so that costs me money. So it needs to be worthwhile, like piece of work for me to get to sign an NDA, and it's a slow process. Do you exclusively? This is a question for both of you. Do you exclusively hire people who can code?
Nope. We hire people who can code and people who can't code, but they can build a test strategy. They are good managers and they do manual testing. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think having a mix is really important. And just to add, again, I talk too much. I'm sorry for everyone getting bored of hearing my voice. But when I go to hackathons, I went through a phase a few years ago, or maybe 5 years ago, with loads of hackathons. I still go to them. But the phase I went through was I was trying to get the best coders on my team. I was like calling up my friends saying, got this hackathon coming up. It's like $10,000 prize. Let's win it. Get loads of coders in, and we would code something technically that was quite good. Like it was really good for what you could achieve in, say, 2 days. We always lost. And then again, the last, 3, 5 or so years, started winning. And what I realized was having half a team of coders and half a team of non-coders is actually basically a mix of people is actually more beneficial. Because as coders, we just code up until the last minute and we haven't thought about the user, we haven't thought about the presentation, we haven't thought about anything. But technically, it might be pretty awesome, but no one, I guess, appreciates that. You're actively pitching a 2-day startup, and if you're pitching a 2-day startup, you've got to think about so many different areas, and you just don't want that kind of inside out view. You want the view coming the other way. You want people to use it and test it and so forth. So yeah, I think I had a good stream of about 5 or 6 hackathons that I won in a row, and I guarantee you those teams were all mixed with techies, non-techies, and the better the mix, the better. The ideas that come out from that, the things, the values that people can add to those teams. So yeah, just to kind of reinforce what Sergey was saying, having a mix is really important. So much value. Also,
a few years ago, there was a popular saying that for building a startup, you need to have a hacker, hustler, and hipster in your team. So yeah, probably that works that way.
Definitely need a mix.
Yeah,
absolutely. Awesome, guys. Look, we've been going for an hour and a half. I'm dying for some food and a drink. I'm sure you are as well. Anything else you'd like to add, to say to the people that are watching? Anything you'd like to share? I will share the organization again in the chat. I'll share a link to that. Everyone, don't forget, go raise lots of issues and ideas on all these projects. Don't be shy. They're friendly people, and they'd love to have your ideas and suggestions. Anything else either of you like to add?
From my perspective, thank you very much for this talk. It was very informative, very helpful. Also, I've already saw that we have a lot of issues and pull requests, and now actually the ball is on our side, and now we literally can't ignore this stuff. We'll have to review it, merge, close, or whatever. So now we can't just abandon it. We have to continue working, and probably that's our responsibility now, and we can't just ignore it. So yep, I guess it's a good to work on it, to work on open source project, work on our projects actually. So yep, thank you very much. It was really cool.
You are welcome, and thank you for coming on here and sharing your projects, your ideas, your challenges, because I know it's not easy to be on a live stream. It's not easy to have an open source project or organization with multiple projects. I know it requires a lot of effort and attention. So anyone who's waiting for me to look at their issue or pull request, I know I have a few waiting on my projects in our community. I'm really sorry. I will look at it really soon, but I know it's hard. It requires effort and time. So thank you for coming on and sharing that with us.
I'm connecting to Victor as well, and I just wanted to share this view here.
You always have an awesome view. Thank you.
Yeah.
Nice.
Here's the Skidnitsa is Carpathian's small city. Yeah, and just wanted to say that build open source projects, guys, and just work remotely. And let's go this winter to Bali with Eddie and Victor and with me, and developing our project there. So
that would be awesome.
The world is small.
Next winter, not this winter. Next
winter, and this winter, and next, and after that. So.
And we can all be as rich as Sergey then. Brilliant. Sounds good. But definitely work hard and get involved in open source projects. And it's not just about code, it's about collaboration. So yes, join us in Bali next winter. Love that. That's a good goal to work towards. So thank you very much. Thank you both very much again. I really appreciate it. And I see some chat. Stephen says, I'm already in Bali. Stephen is everywhere as well. Another awesome, I'll say DevOps person. I don't like to say that, but awesome technologist that's just helping so many companies do so many awesome things. And he gets involved in the community a lot. So glad you're in Bali already. We're on our way. Wait for us. Okay, I'm going to bring up the holding page. Both of you, if you can, stay on, and we'll come back in a second. Thank you for everyone watching. Contribute to open source every day. We'll keep Eddie away, because otherwise I'm going to chase you to contribute to open source. Oh, let me bring up the holding page. Be more organized. Well, that's not the holding page.
That's nice page as well.
We'll give everyone a wave.
Time for waving.